Hello everyone, Christina Werner here. Welcome to day 20 of the holiday card series for 2023. For today's card, I'm going to be using this die set from SSS Stamp called Twinkley Lights. This is actually a die set that I designed for December of 2022, so over a year ago, and I've had this idea for a card in the back of my head ever since. Finally getting a chance to do it today, so I'm excited to show you. The first thing I did was cut some black cardstock to just be a regular sized card front. So A2, which is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. And I'm also going to be using a bunch of different colored cardstocks from Simon. This first color is Midnight Green. I'm going to have that for the actual strand of lights. And then for the lights themselves, I've got Island Blue, Lipstick Red, Sunshine, and Green Leaf. I am going to bring in a purple once I start cutting all the lights out, just because I wanted to make sure I had kind of like a rainbow palette represented. But I cut small little sections of each of these cardstocks so that I could cut them out. As I ran them through my die cutting machine, I did the colored lights and then also a strand. And I cut out 3 strands of the Midnight Green cardstock. And these cut out beautifully, no problem at all. And you actually get 12 different individual lights when you cut them like this. So I cut plenty of the different colors, no problem at all. The second time around with the light strand, my cardstock shifted. And thankfully, this actual strand itself was still intact. So I was still able to use it since I would be adhering the colorful lights over the top anyway. So I did bring in that purple. It's called Royal Purple. It's another SSS Stamp cardstock color. Cut out a little square of that and then cut the lights. For the greeting on my card, I'm using the Simple Holiday Greetings stamp set from SSS Stamp. I've really used this greeting set quite a bit this year. It's one of my favorites. And I chose the greeting "'Tis the Season." Before I stamp it onto my card design, I thought it would be helpful to bring in these strands and sort of get an idea of where I wanted that greeting to nestle in. And so I just kind of draped these across the card front. Once I had a general area where I wanted it to be, I then brought in this grid transparency sheet from SSS Stamp. This just helped me get my greeting on there perfectly straight. I lined it up on the grid. And then when I go to close the door of my MISTI, it sticks to the door and then I can peel up that grid transparency sheet. So now I'm going to be stamping and heat embossing my greeting. So I put quite a bit of anti-static powder down, way more than I usually do, but mostly because I saw a question in a Facebook group. I think it was in Jennifer McGuire's Share Handmade Kindness Facebook group where someone wondered about an anti-static powder tool that didn't put as much powder out because they were never able to get the powder up from their dark cardstocks. And I shared the tip with them to use a microfiber cloth. So I thought this would be a great opportunity to show how well the microfiber cloth will clean up that anti-static powder. I stamped my greeting in white pigment ink from Simon, coated it with some alabaster embossing powder from Burgess Monroe, and then heat set that with my heat tool. Now I'm using a microfiber cloth. This one happens to be from Pink and Maine, but every microfiber cloth will kind of perform the same. So initially it takes off quite a bit, but there's still a ghost of that powder left behind. You can just keep rubbing that. I added a little bit more pressure and it really picks up that powder. I got almost all of it picked up, and really I had an excessive amount of anti-static powder. And on the final card, you don't even see it. So at this point, you can just see a faint little ghost of it, but most of it's gone just from using that microfiber towel. So then I assembled my strands of lights. So this was super, super easy and actually kind of fun when I was using the embellishment one from SSS Stamp. I think this is the score and place tool, I think, or maybe it's the place and score. I can't remember how they call it, but I'll have it linked down below in the video description. But basically, I just put a little tiny bit of glue on each light area and then picked up the different colored lights and brought it over and adhered it down. So it was really easy to get this kind of assembled all in one go. And I decided to put it in rainbow order just to make it a little bit easier to decide what color would come next. I picked each one up with my right hand and the embellishment wand, and then I used the pointer finger of my left hand to help stabilize that and get it kind of wiggled in place. These 3 strands of lights came together really, really quickly. In fact, that second strand where it had cut off a little bit of the lights worked out great. I just put a little tiny bit of glue at the very base of where the light would be and then glued the light on. And no one could even tell on the final card that I didn't have a complete die cut right there. So after I had all of my light strands finished, I then put my black cardstock piece onto a white card base. This just makes it easier because then you have a white cardstock on the inside to write your greeting. You could always do this card on, a folded black card base, but this is just a little bit easier. So initially I thought I would do some ink blending behind each light using some Distress Oxide ink. And so I kind of taped them in place momentarily. And then I thought, you know what? It would be easier just to adhere these down and then ink blend around them. So that's eventually what I did. I used a little bit of glue on the back of each strand and then glued it directly down to the card. So what I'm going to do is take this little tiny blending brush from Waffle Flower. I think it's the size 0 shader brush. I'll link it down below if you want to get some blending brushes that are this size, but it's super teeny tiny. You could also do this with like a Q-tip or a cotton bud, just adding a little bit of that Distress Oxide ink around the different colors. So the colors of Oxide ink I used were mustard seed for the yellow, candied apple for the red, I used Salty Ocean for the blue, Wilted Violet for the purple, and then Mowed Lawn for the green. And I just went around and kind of scrubbed and blended in my Distress Oxide ink around each one of these lights. Love how that looks. It looks like they're glowing. It's the exact look I wanted for this card. So then I brought in some scissors and snipped off the excess of these light strands. And then I brought in some glossy accents. Now I considered using a white gel pen and putting white in the center of the lights, but in the end, I liked the look of the glossy surface. And here is my finished card. In the end, this card came together very, very quickly. I think I filmed it in about 35 minutes. Super fast and easy. I kind of want to create 4 or 5 of these cards. I think they turned out so great, and maybe even change the background color. It would be so fun. All the supplies for everything I used today is listed down below in the video description, including that Twinkley Lights die set. So I hope you check that out over at simonsystamp.com. Thanks for joining me today. I'll be back on Friday with day 21 of the holiday card series.